Well, now today is the day. We are finally getting started on the build out of the Troopy's interior, and I could not be more excited. We got so lucky with the weather today. We've got a little bit of cloud cover. It's only going to be in the 70s, and that means I've got to get as much done today as possible before we're back in the 90s and I'm sweating my tail off being out here. Now, the build itself is not going to look drastically different from what it did before, but there are a few key changes. And the first is the material that we're using. So in the initial build, I used this T-slot aluminum extrusion profile from 80/20, really because I had a bunch of it lying around. But it is also really nice when you're prototyping. When you don't know where connections are going to be or where things are going to mount up, the ability to drop in these T-nuts and move them around and create connections wherever along the profile you need to is really nice. Where this quite literally starts to fall apart, though, is long-term use on and off-road. The vibrations from just daily driving. It doesn't matter how much Loctite I put on these connectors. It doesn't matter how well I torqued them down. Every couple of days, I still found myself going through with my Allen wrench, tightening each of these connections, and it really started to become a pain, especially when some of these were hidden connections, deep in cabinets or hard to reach places. Things just loosened up over time, and when I actually took it apart, I found some things that were completely just self-disassembled. So this time around, we're using a different extruded aluminum profile. Also from 80/20, this is called Quick Frame, and it's a 1" by 1" extruded aluminum profile without those T-slots in it. So instead of using bolted connections everywhere, like with the T-slot profile, the Quick Frame actually uses these. They're kind of like butt connectors. The profile has ridges on the inside here, and you drive these in there, and it's supposed to create a pretty nice friction fit. You can get these connectors in all sorts of different form factors. This is a 3-way right angle, perfect for corners where you've got an upright. They've got straight connectors, 2-way right angles, all the way up to 5-way junctions. So you can get really creative with how you build things and create a lot of pretty complex geometry. I don't know if I'm going to rely solely on the friction fit, though. Part of me thinks that maybe a dab of 2-part epoxy, maybe even drilling some holes and putting some physical fasteners in there will add a lot more durability and longevity to this build, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Now, in addition to the connectors, another key difference between these two profiles is the weight. With this 20 series T-slot extrusion, a linear foot is about 1/3 of a pound. I think per inch it's 0.0247. I'll put it right up here, the actual spec. But so a linear foot is about 1/3 of a pound. And with this quick frame profile, a linear foot is about 1/4 of a pound. The difference there may seem negligible, but as we frame this out, it's really going to add up to some fairly significant weight savings. Now, to make all these cuts and frame this up, I am using the Harbor Freight Special 7 1/4" compound miter saw. After a coupon, I think I picked it up for like $80 and spent another 14 or so on the aluminum cutting blade. It's nothing fancy, but it should be plenty to get this job done for us. Now, in an ideal world, I would have spent a bunch of time in CAD and I'd have some really nice renderings to show you what the finished product should look like here, but I didn't. I opened Fusion 360 and I spent a bit of time drawing up the generic volumes and shapes of things that I want to get to fit in here just to make sure things were reasonable. But I didn't quite take it to that finished product level where I could generate cut lists and just work to a plan. That leaves a little bit of room for creativity and interpretation while I'm in here working, but it might also lead to some extra waste, to some miscuts, or to some problems that I just didn't expect to encounter that we'll just have to solve on the fly. But I'm feeling pretty confident because I generally know what works from the initial build, where those changes need to happen, and how things should fit in here. So let's just start taking some measurements and start cutting some metal. Well, it's my first time working with this quick frame extrusion, and I'm learning that the fit on these connectors is a pretty serious friction fit. I am pounding them together with a soft face hammer here, and it's making me realize that I really have to know which connector I'm going to use, because I am not going to be able to pull it out. If I mess up, it is seriously in there. I don't know what I would do. So right now what I'm working on is the frame for the bottom outer portion of the driver's side box. We'll come in, we'll go up over the wheel well, and we'll come down and we'll finish it off on the other end. Well, now we're making pretty good progress here. I think the most complex part of this project is dealing with the wheel wells. So on both sides now at this point, we've got the frames built to accommodate those wheel wells going up and over and dropping back down. So I'm feeling pretty good about that. This really lays the foundation for the base of the cabinets. On this passenger side, again, we'll have our water tank here. I was trying to come up with a better place for it, maybe behind the driver's seat, but the shape of the one that I have just won't work up there, and I don't want to spend a couple $100 on a new one when the tank that I have is perfectly good. So, you know, I think it's one of those things where in a perfect world, if I had unlimited resources, I could change things around. I could get a new kit and I could do things a little bit better. But we're just going to rock with what we've got. And some things might be less than ideal, but it could always be worse. And so we're just going to figure out a way to make the best and to live with them. Well, it's the morning of day 2, and let me show you everything we accomplished yesterday. So, slow progress, but good progress, I think. We've got the base for our driver's side cabinet all finished out. Right here at the front, you can see this is that quick frame profile with the flange on it. A little bit tedious, because I've got to come in and miter all of these corners before I mount things up. You can see over here, I didn't do that. This was the first piece of that flange profile that I cut. So when I come to do the sides here, I'll just need to notch those so that it'll fit all right. But it's really clean when you just miter those corners. So that base is done. I still need to figure out what I'm going to do for the lid here. In the previous cabinet I just made a top frame that hinged off the back here and opened up. I'm not sure if I'm going to do it the same way again this time, but we'll give it some thought and figure out what we want to do here. Then on the passenger side, dealing with the wheel well here, this will be the base for my water tank, which sits about 12 inches wide and 34 inches deep. And then we've got a little bit of the rest of the base framing for this side done. And today our goal is going to be to finish out the passenger side and to get started on the cabinet right behind the seats. Up there behind the passenger seat will still be sort of our electrical cabinet, so batteries, inverter, chargers are already mounted to the wall, but all of that will sit up there. And then I'll have some more bulk storage in the middle and behind the driver's seat. Now, I got something pretty cool in the mail yesterday that I wanted to share with you all because I think it's going to come in handy as we're doing this build and beyond. Previously, when I was thinking about keeping the truck clean, all I could come up with was a little handheld broom and dustpan. It was about 6 inches wide, and it worked, but it took a lot of effort. We're dealing with dog hair, dirt, sand, all of those things in the Troopy while we're living in it, and it just wasn't keeping things as clean as I would have hoped for. So this is a little USB-C rechargeable handheld vacuum cleaner from Fantic. This is not sponsored at all. It was on an Amazon flash deal. I think I paid like 40 bucks for it. I'll leave a link in the description below. But it comes with every vacuum cleaner attachment you would imagine, just miniaturized. So it's got a little extendable gooseneck here. We've got a little brush tip. And we've got a bigger tip with rubber brushes that's supposed to be really good for dog hair. But here's the deal. Before I actually mount these cabinets in here and get things permanently placed, I'm gonna pull everything out and do a deep clean. I wanna get into the body panels, down in all of the nooks and crannies here, because I've got some real insulation on order, some 3M Thinsulate that I wanna put up all over the interior of this Troopy before we close it up. I think adding in that 3M Thinsulate with an R value of around 5 is going to make a big difference in temperature regulation and hopefully noise inside the Troopy as well. So I'm excited for that, but before we can install it, we've got to get things clean in here. So not sponsored, but you'll see firsthand how it works and if I end up carrying it with me for the duration of the trip. I think the other cool thing about it is that it's going to fit perfectly in my Outback Gear Solutions bags. So I can have a little cleaning compartment that just holds the vacuum, all of the accessories, and it's really gonna work out nice. Well, now we're in the world of making compromises, which is sort of what comes with the territory of flying by the seat of your pants. It seems like this is how projects always go for me. In a perfect world, I'd have the fridge sitting a little bit lower. This is where the fridge platform has to be, and that's driven by the fact that my water tank has to sit here over the wheel well. Again, I could go with a slightly different water tank. I could get that smaller one. I could mount it behind the driver's seat. But what I haven't told you guys is that I'm also on a timeline here. In about 2 weeks, we've got our first shakedown trip to Baja. My girlfriend and I are hitting the road. We've got a wedding in Cabo to get to, and yeah, we could have been normal people and flown down there. But instead, we're driving, and we're using it as a shakedown trip, and I am super excited. But that really means I don't exactly have the time to get a new water tank delivered. None of those things are really readily available in the size that I would need. I don't really want to mess with installing the right fittings and replumbing the entire system. And I'm trying to save money because every dollar that I'm able to save on this build out is a dollar that I can put in the gas tank. So we're going to make some compromises and we're going to live with it. But this is generally what the setup looks like. We'll still have our air compressor at the front here. We'll have our fridge right above it. And I do, at least thankfully, because I'm using that Iceco ALP35, have enough clearance here to be able to open it. It's going to be okay at this height. It's going to block more of this window than I wanted it to, but we're going to make do. We'll have our water tank sitting right here, again with our fill ports back here at the back of the cabinet. And now it's time to start figuring out our power box. We've got the batteries back in here, and we're just going to keep working our way back with this build and figure out what we can make work here. So one of the things I've been thinking about is, how do I make the stuff I grab all the time super accessible? One example of that is my camping chair. Previously, it just lived in the big bulk storage by the driver's side. But now, because it's something I grab every single time I park the truck, I'm building a little cubby for it. So my air compressor, water pump, all that is still going to sit right here as sort of a utility cabinet. And then right here, just an easy slide in, pull out. That's where my camping chair is going to live. So we'll come up and over, we'll make that cubby, then we'll follow it down. But I'm feeling pretty excited about it. And it's going to be a press fit. So the bag is a little bit bigger than the chair itself. So this is 6.5 inches tall, and that should fit just perfectly. All right, well, it is about 6:30 p.m. and I'm calling it a day. This is how I store all of my tools and raw materials overnight. I just load them all up into the Troopy. But I gotta tell you, today was one of those days where it felt like I worked a whole bunch but didn't accomplish much. I think I might be overcomplicating this third cabinet behind the driver and passenger seat. But to be fair, there is a lot that has to go in there. The electronics portion of it is full of big, bulky things. The batteries, the inverter charger, the bus bars and fuses for the solar controller and the alternator charger. And to complicate it even further, right, I cut and crimped all of those wires for the initial configuration of that initial build. And so now I'm trying to slightly reconfigure things, but stay within the confines of those pre-cut and pre-crimped wires. It's not a huge deal if I need to make some new cabling up, but if I could avoid it, that would be great. I'm also trying to figure out the interface between these three distinct units. We've got the driver's side bench cabinet, we've got the passenger side cabinet with the water tank and the air compressor and all of that, and now we've got this perpendicular cabinet running right behind the driver and passenger seat. And just trying to figure out where things interface. Do they connect at all? Do they stay as separate individual cabinets in case I never need to pull something out or get to something? And thinking about that serviceability fact, and what if I need to get to my water tank? What if I need to get to the electronics pretty easily? How do I set myself up for success? So it's just been a day of back and forth, drawing things up, thinking about things, cutting some metal, recutting some metal. But overall, I think it's been a good day. I think these are the types of problems that if I just sleep on it and come at it with fresh eyes in the morning, then I feel like we'll be in pretty good shape. So we're making progress. I think another day or two, and we may really be in the home stretch. I've just got to finish that back cabinet, and then the lid for this driver's side bench cabinet, the hinge and everything there, I need to figure out. But we're getting close. So that's where I'll leave you for tonight, and then I'll pick you up in the morning. It's the morning of day 3 now, and my goal for the day is really to focus on this rear cabinet that holds my electrical. It's got a cubby for the Boxio, it's got some storage behind the driver's seat, and then what I also want to do is to make it the same height as the driver's side bench cabinet over here, and generally this cabinet as well. Some storage above that I can access quickly from the driver passenger seat. Maybe you keep raincoat there, maybe I keep some camera gear there, something like that. Where this got complex and fell apart for me yesterday is really as I start to think about the electrical cabinet portion of this. Designing and building something that holds the batteries securely, holds the inverter securely, but lets me access it, and holds this DIY bus bar fuse block for my chargers that I made. it gets a little bit complex because obviously you've got the fuse block for the chargers that may need to be serviceable in the future if I need to get to these fuses at all. It needs to be mounted securely. It's kind of big, it's bulky. Of course, I could spend the money on something like a Victron Lynx distributor that does this same job, but I had these components and they're high quality Blue Sea Systems components, and I just didn't want to spend the 200 or so bucks it would cost to replace those with the Victron unit. I think that part of what has made this complex in my mind is that I'm actually still waiting on a few of these connectors in the mail. So you can see here on this cabinet, the idea here is that I go up another 4 or 5 inches here and create a little pantry cubby that may have top access, I'm thinking right now. But I'm missing one of these legs to go vertical. So right here, this is a 4-way junction. What I've got coming hopefully today are a handful of 5-way junctions that I realized through the build that I need in a couple of places here. So if I switch that out with a 5-way junction, I can make this pantry cabinet here, which gives me more vertical height here, which then gives me room to, you know, maybe think about mounting my bus bar and fuse block here vertically next to the battery, which is really the orientation that I had it in previously when this was the wooden sort of hygiene cabinet with the big cubby here. This bus bar and fuse block was mounted vertically inside that cabinet. So I think I can follow the same general methodology here. And then for some of this mounting, I'm toying around with the idea of actually drilling and throwing some riv nuts in here. I'm not going to get crazy with it and turn these aluminum extrusions into Swiss cheese, but I think if in a couple of places I drill and set some riv nuts, then I can make some really good connections for things that need to mount up like this. I'll probably drop riv nuts across some bars to hold the inverter, and then I'll be feeling pretty good about things. So our bench cabinet here has a lid now. This will be the lid. It's 1 inch short of the actual bench itself, and that's to allow me to mount the hinges on the back side. And then it'll just open up right like that. It'll hold up in this upright position. And then on the lid itself, I'm using the flanged profile. I'm not totally sure which edge of the flange to use. There's this deep side, it's about 3/4 of an inch, and then there's the shallow side, it's about 1/4 of an inch. I'm thinking that because of the span here, I didn't put a center cross brace in it. Maybe I should have, time will tell. But I think I'll use the deep side of the flange and put maybe a 1/2 inch piece of plywood in here, get that mounted, and this will just give it some extra rigidity, and it should be fine to sit on or stand on for day-to-day use. On the passenger side cabinet, we've got this completely framed up now. So we've got sort of a utilities compartment down here. That's where the air compressor, water pump, everything like that will sit and be pretty easily accessible for maintenance or any issues that may arise. And then up here, this is where the fridge is going to sit. Again, I've got the deep side of the flanged profile here, so another 1/2 inch sheet of ply. We'll put the fridge on there and we'll mount it with some straps through the handles probably. Behind it there, that little rise, I'm thinking that's a good little pantry storage box. So I've got the flanged profile down on the inside. That's the shallow flange, so maybe put down a piece of 1/4 inch ABS or something like that. Same thing on the top. Maybe it'll be a top entry sort of pantry. That might be really nice. It could also be a front entry where you just sort of stuff things in there. We'll figure that out when it comes time to put all the fascias on here. And then in the back for the electrical cabinet, let me climb in and show you this. So we've still got a little bit more work to do back here on the electrical cabinet itself, but I think the idea is starting to solidify itself. We've got the battery box built. We'll have retention back here, retention along all 4 of the sides. This little U-shaped piece is going to come up and we'll drill and set some riv nuts in here to mount the inverter right on top. So batteries are nice and secure, inverter will be mounted nice and secure and tied into the battery retention itself. And then I'm thinking that we've got plenty of room on the side up here to mount the bus bar fuse blocks. Let me show you here. So here's a quick little mock-up of what that looks like. You've got the batteries, the inverter charger, and then the bus bar fuse blocks. So this becomes sort of, you know, just the electrical cabinet, and then I need to frame up the walls coming up here, sort of closing it off. And previously the plywood cabinet that was here went all the way to the base of the alu cab. I'm not sure how tall I'm gonna take it this time, but I think something similar for a little bit of storage up over the top of this electrical cabinet. You know, it really seems like every time I'm in a build phase like this that the timelines are just not on my side. Here I am yet again trying to wrap up a build with only 2 weeks before this shakedown trip to Baja. I'm feeling pretty confident about it, but at the same time I'm reminding myself that this is really the purpose of a shakedown trip. If the build is 80% complete, but the core systems are functional, that's really what we want to test out. And maybe that even leaves some room for creative inspiration. Maybe, you know, coming back from the trip with some ideas about storage or functionality might really spark some new ideas for me. So I'm going to try to get as far as I can before we have to take off, but I'm feeling pretty confident just about where we are already. I think this is a good place to wrap up this video. The framing is 80 or 90% there. And in this next one, we'll hit the insulation, we'll put the fascias on and start to really build out what this storage is going to look like. And then it'll really start to feel like it's taken shape. It's hard maybe to visualize when it's just the aluminum frames in here, but we're making good progress. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate you being here and how much I appreciate all the support you show me. It really means a lot. If you like what I'm doing, it's a huge help to give this video that thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't already. There's a lot of good stuff, and I can't wait to bring you to Baja with us for the shakedown trip at the Troopy. I've got the pretty ambitious goal to try to hit 15,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and I can't do it without your help. So maybe share these videos with a friend or two. I really appreciate it. Until next time, get out and explore somewhere.